Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. Yang berbahagia Profesor Dr. Hassan, Professor of Chemical Engineering, and ladies and gentlemen. Today I would like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Wong. He will be sharing with us, some tips on research best practices. A little bit on Dr. Wong. Dr. Wong is a consultant of education and research for iGroup Asia Pacific. He has 9 years of experience in the information industry. Prior to joining iGroup, he worked in Thomson Reuters for close to 10 years, involving in the business of real science and relevant research data. By leveraging those professionally indexed contents, Dr. Wong has provided consultancy in areas of research benchmarking, research integrity, and technology transfer. He also has more than a decade of experience in corporate engineering business for Whitmore and Masa. Dr. Wong holds a PhD in Polymer Science and Technology from the University of Manchester. He remains active in the Asia Pacific scientific community, engaging with researchers, research management and funding agencies on research evaluation and assessment, and dialogues on best practices in driving research excellence. He was also the keynote speaker at the Mahathir Science Awards 2011, held in January 2012. Dr. Wong was also guest speaker at several thought leadership events on topics like technology commercialization, citation index, university rankings, and research collaboration. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Wong to deliver his speech. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Hope you hear me well without the mic. Not so used to holding mic or speak in front of something. I changed the topic a little bit, but pretty much the same thing. I know we were talking about research best practices, but I thought to make it easier to articulate my message, I changed it slightly. I call it research 1, 2, 3, which is basically counting the step of 1, number 2, number 3, which I thought is important because a lot of researchers, when they first started their work, is always wondering how to begin. So hopefully by structuring it in the way that as a process, it helps you a little bit in working on your project, whether it's for a master degree program or PhD program or even postdoc program. The so-called research 1, 2, 3 is really looking at the 3 components of it. Firstly, you look at the research authoring. And secondly, research marketing. That could be something new to you, but I think it's important for you to be aware of because not trying to say that researchers have to become a sales promoter, but to some extent you need to do that to create awareness, and I'll explain why later on. Last and not least, of course, the soft skills. And that has become a competency issue because researchers, it's all about community. You need to go around to network, mingling, acquire collaborations. All these are people-to-people relationship, and it's no different from any other professional. Well, let's start on something called authoring. This is probably an area that you're very familiar with, but despite the fact that most of us are quite familiar with that, it also could be overwhelmingly distracted by a lot of different tools available. If you walk into a library like this, you probably can easily find that there's a lot of content, database. Sometimes you're just wondering how to begin with. So this is what I want to cover in the first section. Presumably, most of you know about peer review, right? So when you send your article or your article to a journal, hopefully to be published, they go through an editorial process, and an expert will review your paper, pretty much making a decision whether they accept or not. That's called peer review. Now, incidentally, this is the 350 years anniversary. Sounds like a long time, but it means it's important. Now, why peer review is important? We subscribe to a lot of journals out there, and peer review is important because they give you an authoritative information, content, so that you can trust on it. So it is something that is important for you to recognize the content source. It's just like news. When you heard about news, do you know where is the place that usually get the fastest breaking news? Anybody know the answer? I know some people know the answer, but those who know don't tell me. Anybody can guess on it?
Social media.
Social media. Example? Facebook. Twitter is actually the most famous one. They are quite fast actually. So, do you trust the information when it came out from Facebook or Twitter? No. So, that is what you need to be validated. And it takes 2 to 3 hours. From my background working with Reuters, usually it probably takes about 5 to 6 hours. If they come with the pictures, they need to look at the picture as well. Then they'll broadcast the thing. So it always have about 5-6 hours different before someone like BBC, CNN say, this is the breaking news. Of course, if you're thinking of something eventful, like for example, Formula 1 in Singapore, that's a different thing because you have the journalists right on the spot, all are ready, so they can do it very quickly. That's a completely different scenario. Now, 83 years ago, there's this scope called the annual reviews. And that's actually a pretty groundbreaking at that moment because this whole annual review is a journal for medical research. And what it's doing differently at that moment is to write a summary of a different aspect of research, which is pretty helpful for researchers at that moment to understand so-called a different multidisciplinary work going on in the medical research. Now, multidisciplinary is not something new. I'm pretty sure you heard about that often today, but even at 80 over years ago, there's such a challenge, and that's the purpose of this whole journal at that moment. 60 years ago, Eugene Garfield introduced citation index. Hopefully, some of you know about Eugene Garfield. If you do not know him, I'm sure you heard about ISI or Web of Science. Some of you like it, some of you don't like it. So depend on which part of the fence. Well, citation index pretty much introduced by Eugene Garfield, who was a chemist, and he's still doing a lot of work on chemistry. He spent a lot of time in information, and actually he borrowed the whole idea of citation index for finding the literature, which is at that moment, you don't call it overwhelming, not like today, which you're looking at millions of publications a day, a year. But during that time, without the computer technology, he really find it difficult to find the paper or article he want to read. So that's why he introduced the whole citation index, and eventually he founded a company called ISI, and things like impact factor, citation index, pretty much derived from it. Of course, the company was eventually acquired by Thomson Reuters. Now, we all pretty much know research is important, but do you know what exactly the research? If you look at it, research is all about publication, citation, evaluation, and of course getting funding and promotion. There's a lot of pressure coming along. The reason is that we're all using the taxpayer money. From individuals, it's a question of publish or perish, because if you don't publish, nobody knows what you're doing. And nobody knows what you're doing, you won't get funding. And of course, there's a lot of these indicators or metrics out there, H index, and unfortunately, some people use impact factor wrongly, but that is also an indicator. And of course, the peer pressure. For the university, ranking is important. Again, ranking is a love and hate relationship. You have QS ranking, you have THE ranking, you have Shanghai Jiao Tong ranking. Pretty confusing, right? But why ranking is important? Well,